The curse of the Brahmarakshash. The warnings of the last village. The air at 14,000 feet doesn't just feel thin, it feels sharp, like inhaling powdered glass. Our team, 6 of us, led by Dr. Eris Miller from the University of Chicago, had spent 3 years tracking the Vailapis scrolls. These weren't just ancient texts, they were a roadmap to a temple that shouldn't exist. Local legends called it Rakmandir, the Blood Temple. The last village we passed through was a cluster of stone huts that looked like they were huddling together for warmth. When we told the headman, an old man whose face was a map of deep-set wrinkles, where we were going, he didn't ask for money. He didn't even argue. He simply pointed to the peak draped in a perpetual black mist and whispered one word, Brahmarakshash. He thinks it's a ghost. Sarah, our tech lead, snickered as we adjusted our oxygen packs. But I saw the headman's eyes. It wasn't superstition. It was memory. He wasn't afraid of a spirit, he was afraid of a predator. He told our translator that a Brahmarakshash is what happens when a scholar of the highest order, a Brahmin, commits an act of such visceral evil that the earth refuses to swallow his soul. He becomes a demon with the intellect of a genius and the hunger of a starving wolf. We ignored him. We had satellite imagery, thermal scanners, and a $2 million grant. We thought we were the apex predators of the 21st century. We didn't know we were just bringing fresh meat to an ancient table. We found the entrance hidden behind a frozen waterfall. The temple wasn't built onto the mountain, it was carved into it, a jagged wound in the granite. The architecture was wrong. The pillars were leaning at impossible angles, and the carvings didn't depict gods or dancing maidens. They depicted anatomical dissections. Stone reliefs of bodies being unmade, layer by layer, with terrifying precision. As we broke the seal of the inner sanctum, a massive slab of black basalt etched with silver, the smell hit us. It wasn't the smell of a tomb. It didn't smell like dust or dry rot. It smelled of copper, raw iron, and something sweet, like rotting fruit. The thermal is picking up a heat signature, Miller whispered, staring at his tablet. But it's moving in patterns. Geometric patterns. The deeper we went, the warmer it got. The walls began to weep a thick, dark fluid that turned our flashlights' beams a sickly crimson. We reached the Garbhagriha, the heart of the temple. In the center sat a throne made of fused human bone, polished to a mirror finish. And sitting on that throne was a figure that made our breath hitch in our chests. It stood nearly 8 feet tall. Its skin was the color of a bruised plum, stretched so tight over an oversized skeleton that you could see the rhythmic pulsing of every vein. It wore the tattered, yellowed threads of a priest's robe, but its face was a nightmare of intellect. It had a massive, bulging cranium and eyes that glowed with a cold, predatory amber light. This was the Brahmarakshash. It didn't roar. It didn't scream. It looked at us with a terrifying, calm curiosity. Dr. Miller, it spoke. The voice didn't come from its throat, it vibrated in our very bones, a perfect, unaccented English. You have traveled very far to learn. I shall begin the lesson. Before we could even raise our tranquilizer rifles, the creature moved. It didn't run, it flickered. One moment it was on the throne, the next, it was standing over our security officer, Jensen. With a hand that ended in 5-inch, obsidian-hard talons, it reached into Jensen's chest. There was no struggle. It was a surgical strike. It pulled out Jensen's heart, still beating, and held it up to the light, studying the valves with the focus of a scientist. The next 10 minutes were a descent into a visceral hell. We scrambled back toward the tunnels, but the Brahmarakshash was playing with us. It used the architecture of the temple like a predator in a cage. It would appear from the ceiling, snatch a team member, and we would hear the wet, crunching sounds of a study coming from the darkness. It didn't just eat. It disassembled. We found Sarah in a side chamber. She was still alive, but the creature had unfolded her. It had used its claws to peel back her skin and pin it to the stone walls like a biological tapestry, exposing the rhythmic churning of her organs. It wanted to see how she worked. The brain, the voice echoed through the halls. The seat of the soul is so fragile, so full of delicious, electrical memories. I watched from behind a pillar as the creature cornered Dr. Miller. Miller was screaming, pleading for his life in the name of science. The Brahmarakshash tilted its head, a mockery of human empathy. You call yourself a seeker of truth, Miller. But you fear the ultimate truth, that you are merely a collection of wet tissue and ego. With a single, swift motion, the creature unhinged its jaw. It didn't bite, it gripped Miller's head and, with a terrifying pressure, cracked the skull like a walnut. I heard the sound of the brain being extracted, a wet, suctioning noise that will haunt me until the day I die. I was the only one left. I retreated into the deepest part of the ossuary, a room filled with thousands of human skulls arranged in mathematical fractals. The heat was unbearable now. The blood temple was literally sweating. The walls were pulsing in time with the creature's own heartbeat. The Brahmarakshash entered the room slowly. It was covered in the crimson life force of my friends, but it looked refreshed, its amber eyes glowing brighter. It began to chant in a language that sounded like grinding stones, ancient Sanskrit, but distorted into a demonic frequency. As it chanted, the skulls in the room began to chatter. The air filled with the scent of ozone. I realized then that the temple wasn't a place of worship, it was a biological battery. The creature was using the fresh energy of my team to fuel a ritual of ascension. It didn't want to just stay in the mountain, it wanted to expand. I found a cache of emergency flares in my pack. I knew I couldn't kill it. You can't kill a curse with fire. But I could bury it. The creature saw me. It smiled, showing rows of needle-thin teeth. You think the fire will stop the hunger? I have waited 1,000 years for a mind like yours. Your memories of the modern world. I want them. I want to taste your cities. I struck the flare and threw it directly into a ruptured line of the temple's sweat, the highly flammable, ancient oils that lined the walls. The explosion was a deafening roar of orange and black. The stone pillars, already weakened by age and the creature's corrupting presence, began to buckle. The Brahmarakshash let out its first true sound, a high-pitched, intellectual shriek of pure rage. It wasn't the sound of a dying animal, it was the sound of a frustrated god. I ran. I didn't look back as the ceiling collapsed, burying the bone throne, the surgical reliefs, and the demonic scholar under millions of tons of Himalayan granite. I reached the frozen waterfall just as the sun was setting. I didn't stop until I hit the village. The headman looked at me, bloody, shivering, and alone, and he didn't ask what happened. He simply handed me a bowl of warm tea and whispered, "The hunger never dies. It only sleeps." I'm back in Chicago now. My hands won't stop shaking. I can't look at medical textbooks anymore without seeing Sarah's unfolded form. But the worst part isn't the memory. It's the sound. Every time I'm in a quiet room, I hear a soft, rhythmic clicking from the vents. Click, click, click. And I wonder, if that creature really wanted my memories, did it have to be in the room to take them? Or am I just the new broadcaster for the curse of the Brahmarakshash? The harvest of the Pisacha. The audio begins with the sound of jagged, wet breathing. It's the sound of a man whose lungs are filling with something thicker than air. My name is Marcus Thorne, Senior Geologist for GeoLink Industries. If you find this, do not send a rescue team. Do not come for us. We thought we were drilling for rare earth minerals. We thought we were just breaking through a vein of quartz. We weren't. We were breaking into a digestive system. The intro sets the stage. A high-tech mineral exploration team has gone missing in the dense, monsoon-lashed forests of southern India. They ignored the local Buddha practitioners who warned them that the mountain was not made of stone, but of the petrified sins of an ancient king. This king had sought eternal life by consuming the vital essence of his own subjects, eventually mutating into a Pisacha, a scavenger of souls, a creature that is half-starved anatomy and half-curse. The team consisted of Marcus, 3 engineers, and an environmental consultant named Priya who knew the local lore but was silenced by corporate contracts. They used a thermal boring drill to open a 3-foot-wide shaft into a cavern that hadn't seen light since the Holocene. As they descended the ropes, the air changed. It didn't just get colder, it got heavy, smelling of old copper and fermented honey. This is the sweet rot of the Pisacha's lair. The walls of the cave weren't smooth, they were covered in a biofilm, a pulsating, translucent layer of fungus that looked like stretched human skin. "Look at the walls," Priya whispered, her flashlight trembling. "Those aren't stalactites." They looked up. Hanging from the ceiling were thousands of small, shriveled bundles. They looked like oversized cocoons, but as Marcus zoomed in with his camera, he saw a human hand protruding from one, the fingernails elongated and jagged. These were the vessels, generations of trespassers held in a state of necrotic hibernation, their life force being slowly siphoned away to feed the thing in the dark. The curse manifested first as a sound. A low, rhythmic grinding, like 2 massive stones being rubbed together. Then, the first engineer, Henderson, screamed. He didn't just fall, he was snatched upward. The beam of Marcus's light caught the villain, the Pisacha. It was a skeletal titan, standing nearly 9 feet tall if it were to straighten its hunched, crooked spine, Its skin was the color of wet ash, translucent enough to show the black, stagnant fluid pumping through its oversized arteries. It had no eyes, only deep, weeping pits that sensed the heat and the terror of its prey. Its fingers were like obsidian needles, designed for delicate, anatomical extraction. The Pisacha didn't kill Henderson immediately. It held him against the biofilm wall. With a precision that was terrifyingly learned, it used its needle fingers to stitch Henderson's limbs directly into the cave's living tissue. The curse was a biological integration. The mountain was the creature, and the creature was the mountain. The horror of the Pisacha is its scholarship of suffering. Like the Brahmarakshash, it is an intelligent predator. It began to communicate, not through words, but through neural echoes. Marcus felt the creature's hunger in his own mind, 1,000 years of starvation, a craving for the salt and heat of human life. They tried to flee back to the shaft, but the cave began to constrict. The biofilm on the walls expanded, the floor becoming soft and spongy like an open wound. The Pisacha moved with a sickening, liquid grace, appearing from the shadows to claim the next victim. It took the second engineer, Sarah. It didn't bite her, it unmade her. Marcus watched in a state of paralyzed shock as the creature used its long, hollow tongue to pierce her carotid artery. It wasn't just drinking blood, it was downloading her. As she withered, the Pisacha's own gray skin began to flush with a vibrant, healthy crimson. It was a parasitic restoration. The creature was using their modern vitality to heal its ancient, rotting frame. Priya realized the truth as she looked at her own hands. Small, black veins were starting to spiderweb up her wrists. It's not just a monster, Marcus. It's a contagion. The air in here, it's full of its spores. We aren't being hunted. We're being digested by the air itself. The curse of the Pisacha is a slow-motion mutation. Marcus felt his skin becoming tough, leathery, and gray. His heart began to beat in sync with the mountain's heavy, subterranean thud. The creature wanted them to become part of the hanging garden on the ceiling, to live for centuries as a battery of pain. The Pisacha emerged from the darkness, its face inches from Marcus's. It tilted its head, its weeping pits leaking a black, caustic fluid. Stay. The neural echo rumbled in Marcus's skull. The marrow of the new world is so sweet. In a final act of desperation, Priya took the demolition charges meant for the mineral survey. She didn't try to kill the creature, she knew it was as old as the earth itself. She aimed for the heart stone, a massive, pulsating red quartz at the center of the sanctum that acted as the creature's physical anchor. Run, Marcus. While your blood is still yours. The explosion was visceral. The mountain let out a sound that wasn't an echo, it was a scream. A sound of tearing muscle and cracking bone. The red quartz shattered, raining down shards of frozen blood that burned like acid. Marcus scrambled up the rope, his muscles screaming, his vision blurring as the gray tint in his skin fought to take over. He reached the surface just as the drill site collapsed into a massive sinkhole, swallowing the camp, the equipment, and the Pisacha's lair into the black bowels of the Ghats. The story ends with Marcus in a sterilized hospital room. He is safe, but the doctors are horrified. His blood work comes back, impossible. His hemoglobin is being replaced by a black, crystalline structure. He looks at the camera, his eyes now leaking that same dark fluid. The mountain didn't fall, he whispers. It just changed its shape. I can feel it, clicking in my bones. I'm not a man anymore. I'm a satellite. And the warden is still hungry. The bloodline of the Varkalak. With a heavy, rhythmic thudding, the sound of a pulse pounding through a microphone. This is Dr. Elias Vance, lead geneticist for the Primordial Initiative. We are currently 40 miles deep into a black zone in the southern Carpathians. The local villagers call this valley the Throat. They say the dirt here is red not because of iron, but because the land itself hasn't stopped bleeding for 1,000 years. We came here looking for the UR genome, the original human DNA. We found it. God help us, we found it, and it's still hungry. The setup, a team of elite geneticists and tactical recovery officers are searching for the tomb of a 12th century warlord rumored to have the blood of the beast. They aren't looking for a myth, they think he was a genetic anomaly, a human with a mutation that allowed for hyper-regeneration and apex predatory traits. They find a citadel buried beneath a landslide, its stones held together by a mortar made of crushed bone and dried marrow. Team enters the lower kennel. It isn't a dungeon, it's a larder. The walls are lined with rusted iron cages, but the skeletons inside aren't human. They are distorted, rib cages that have fused into solid plates, limbs that have grown second joints, and skulls with 3 rows of jagged, carnivorous teeth. This wasn't a prison, the tactical officer, Graves, whispers as his light hits a pile of gnawed femurs. This was a farm. He was breeding them. Or he was changing them. The air in the citadel is thick with the smell of wet fur and raw, open meat. They find the sovereign chamber. In the center is a massive stone sarcophagus, but it's been burst open from the inside. The heavy lid, weighing nearly 3 tons, has been tossed aside like a piece of cardboard. On the floor, they find fresh tracks, huge, 5-toed prints with deep claw indentations, but the gait is unmistakably human. The first attack is a blur of crimson and gray. One of the scientists is snatched from the back of the line. There is no growl, only the sound of a heavy, wet slap as something hits the floorboards above them. The beam of the flashlight finds the villain, the Varkalak. This isn't a Hollywood werewolf. It is a Wolfman, in the most disturbing sense. It is a human body that has been stretched and mutated until the skin has split, leaving the raw, red musculature exposed to the air. Its face is a ruin of human features, eyes that are milky with cataracts but hypersensitive to motion, and a jaw that has elongated into a snout-like protrusion filled with jagged, yellowed bone. It moves on all fours with a terrifying, disjointed speed, its spine clicking like a series of gunshots with every stride. Stride. It doesn't kill for territory. It kills for the hot marrow. It corners the team's medic and, with a terrifying, articulate hand, snaps her arm like a dry twig just to hear the sound. The Varkalak is a biological nightmare. Dr. Vance realizes that the creature isn't undead, it is overalive. Its cells are regenerating so fast that its skin can't keep up, resulting in a constant state of flayed agony. The curse is a runaway genetic mutation. It needs our stem cells, Vance gasps as they barricade themselves in a chapel of bone. It's not just eating us. It's absorbing us to patch its own failing tissue. Every time it bites, it's grafting our DNA onto its own. The creature begins to speak, but it's a horrific, vocal cord shredding rasp. It mimics the screams of the medic it just took, using her voice to lure the remaining soldiers into the darkness. It is an intelligent hunter, using the team's own tactical formations against them. It cuts the power lines. It disables the exits. It is herding the scientists toward the central pit, the place where the ancient warlord first ascended. Climax takes place in the Marrow Well. The Varkalak corners Dr. Vance and the last officer. The room is a literal lake of blood, kept fresh by the mountain's unnatural cold. The creature stands upright, reaching a height of nearly 9 feet. It looks at Vance with a flicker of ancient, human intelligence. It reaches into its own chest, pulling back the raw muscle to reveal a heart that is 3 times the size of a man's, pulsating with a violent, black energy. The blood is life, the Varkalak rasps, the words ending in a wet, canine snarl. It lunges. The tactical officer is torn in half, literally, by the creature's sheer physical strength. The Varkalak doesn't stop to eat, it begins to wear the officer's skin, draped over its own raw muscle in a horrific attempt to stop the pain of its own existence. This is the Wolfman variant, a creature of absolute, bloody desperation. Vance manages to trigger the thermal overload on the team's portable laboratory equipment. He doesn't want to kill the beast, he wants to cook it from the inside out. As the equipment vents superheated gas, the Varkalak shrieks, a sound that is half human sob and half apex roar. The citadel begins to groan. The ancient bone mortar is failing. Vance drags himself through a drainage pipe, the sound of the creature's frantic, wet footsteps echoing right behind him. He bursts out into the cold Carpathian night just as the citadel collapses into the gorge, buried under a sea of red mud and ancient stone. The story ends with Vance being debriefed in a high-security government facility. He looks healthy, but he won't eat. He can't stand the smell of cooked food. He only wants it cold. He looks into the camera, and for a split second, his pupils elongate into vertical slits. "We didn't find the UR genome," he whispers. "We found the hunger. And now that it's in the water. Now that it's in me, the pack is going to grow." The final shot is of Vance's own skin beginning to crack at the knuckles, revealing a sliver of raw, hyperregenerative red muscle underneath.